Dear learner, this is the next block, and that is the political thoughts of the John Rawls. Here I am talking about the important thoughts that is given by the John Rawls. And this is the talking about John Rawls was one of the most influential political philosophers of the 20th century. His work, especially the book A Theory of Justice in the 1971, and sought to establish a framework for understanding justice, fairness, and the role of institutions in promoting a just society. Rawls is known for his theory of justice as fairness, which provides a liberal egalitarianism's foundations for political ethics and emphasize principles of equality, individual rights, and social cooperation. Core concept in John Rawls' political thoughts. A. Justice as a fairness. Rawls' central idea is that justice should be understood as a fairness. That meaning that social and political arrangements should be designated so far to all members of society, particularly the least advantaged. Justice is, as fairness is built on the idea that social institutions and their distributions of goods and opportunity should be structural in a way that no one would find unreasonable if they were deciding from a position of ignorance about their own status. Second is that is the original positions and the veil of ignorance. The original positions is a hypothetical scenario in which individuals come together to choose the basic principles that will govern the society. They do this forms of behind a veil of ignorance, which means they do not know their personal characteristics such as their race, gender, intelligence, or wealth. So they cannot voice the choice of principles in their favors. Veil of ignorance censors ensures impartiality as individuals do not know whether they will be rich or poor, powerful or powerless. They must make choice that would be fair to anyone's regardless of their roles. Argue that under these conditions, rational individuals would choose principles that ensure fairness and equality because they would not be want to risk being disadvantaged if they ended up in a marginal positions. In talking about the two principles of the justice, that means Rawls argue that rational individuals in the original positions would agree on the two key principles of the justice. One is called the equal liberty principles. Each person should have an equal rights to the most extensive set of the basic liberty compatible with a similar systems of liberty for others. This includes freedoms of speech, freedoms of consciousness, and the right to vote and right to hold public office. Importance. These principles guarantee equal fundamental rights and political freedoms for all individuals. The difference principles and fair equality of opportunity. The fair equality of opportunity Rawls argue that social and economic inequality should be arranged so that offices and positions are open to all under conditions of their equality of opportunity. This means that individuals with similar ability and talent should have an equal chances to achieve success regardless of their social backgrounds. The difference principles, social and economic inequality are only justifiable if they benefit the least advantaged member of the society. Rawls believes that inequality in wealth, incomes, and status can only be justified if they improve the positions of the poorest peoples. Together, though these two principles prioritize equal liberty, demands that any inequality serve to enhance the welfare of the least privileged in the society. Next is talking about the basic structure of the society. That means Rawls had talked about the basic structure of the society, the major social, political, and economic institutions, because these structures shape the life opportunity available to individuals. The principles of justice should guide the designations of the basic structures to ensure fairness and equality. Institutions such as the legal systems, economy, and educations are essentials in determining the people's prospects and roles. Argue that these institutions should be arranged in a way that promote justice and fairness to all. Next is that is Leclerc's priority. Rawls assigned Leclerc's priority in his two principles of justice. The first principles, equal liberty, has priority over the second difference principles and fair equality of opportunity. This means that individuals' liberty cannot be sacrificed for economic advancement or even for the welfare of the least advantaged. Within the second principles, fair equality of opportunity has priority over the different principles. This ensures that before addressing inequality in wealth, there must be first be equal opportunity for all individuals to succeed. Now come to the key works of the John Rawls. A Theory of Justice. Rawls' most influential work, A Theory of Justice, outlined his visions of justice as a fairness and introduced the concept of original positions and the veil of ignorance. It is a comprehensive exploration of how a just society should be structured. The book critiques utilitarianism, which seek to maximize overall happiness, arguing that this approach can justify the sacrifice of individual rights for the greater goods. Rawls instead promote a deontological, duty-based approach to justice and emphasizing the inviolability of individual rights. Now come to the political liberalisms. In political liberalisms, John modified and expanded on his earliest idea, his focus on the idea of pluralisms, the fact that modern democratic society are characterized by a diversity of moral, philosophical, and religious beliefs. Rawls argued that political institutions should be designated to accommodate these pluralisms while being neutral regarding comprehensive or doctrines. He introduced the concept of an overlapping consciousness where individuals with different morals or religious view can agree on the basic political principles of justice, even if they disagree on a deeper philosophical or ethical issue. Public regions become central in the political liberalisms. Rawls argue that citizens in a pluralistic society should use the public regions when debating political issue, which means appealing to shared value and common goods rather than sectarian or private beliefs. Now come to the law of the peoples. In the law of the peoples, Rawls extends his theory of justice to the international sphere. He outlines principles for how society or people should interact in the global context, promoting principles of equality, human rights, and non-aggressions. Rawls argue that well-oriented society respect the sovereignty of other nations, provide assistance to the burdened society, those unable to function effectively due to poverty or political instability, and maintaining just and fair terms of cooperation between the nations. Human rights, that is talking about the central to his visions of international justice, and Rawl believes that every society must adhere to certain basic human rights principles to the considered just. Next is that talking about the critics and responses of the Rawls' political thoughts. Libertarian critics Robert Nozick. Robert Nozick in his books Anarchy, A State and Utopia argued that against Rawls' theory from the libertarian perspectives, Nozick believes that individuals have invaluable right to their property and that any redistribution taxes such as that implied by the difference principles violate these rights. He supports a minimum stage and protects individuals' rights but does not intervene in economic redistributions. Responses. Rawls economics, his difference priority is not about the arbitrary redistributions but about creating a system where social cooperations benefits everyone including the least advantaged. For Rawls, justice requires not just protections of right, but also addressing inequality that affects people's lives and chances. Now come to the communitarian critics, Michael Standers and Charles Taylor. Communitarians argue that Rawls' theory is too focused on the individuals and neglect the importance of community, traditions, and social relationships. They claim that Rawls' conceptions of the self is an abstract rational agent in the original positions is unrealistic and ignorance the embedments of individuals in cultural and social context. Response Rawls acknowledge that individuals are embedded in social relationship, but he believes that for a fair society, political principles must be chosen in a way that abstract from these specific identity to ensure impartiality and fairness. He argued that political principles should allow individuals to pursue their own conceptions of the good life within the just frameworks. Now come to the feminist critics. Feminist critics argue that Rawls' theory, by focusing on public institutions and formal equality, neglect the role of genders, power relationship, and inequality in the private sphere, such as within the family or care work. They argue that his framework does not fully address systematic operations related to the genders responses, while Rawls does not directly address the feminist conceptions concerned in his early work. His principles of justice, particularly fair equality of opportunity and difference principles, can be applied to together inequality in both public and private sphere as the focus on providing equal opportunity and improving the positions of the least advantaged. Next is talking about the legacy and influence of the John Rawls. John Rawls' political philosophy has had a profound impact on the fields of ethics, political theory, and the law. His concept of justice as fairness, the original positions, and the difference principles have been widely discussed and debated across various academic disciplines. Impact on the political theory Rawls works has set a agenda for debate about the justice and fairness for decades. His theory provides a robust alternative to the utilitarianism and influence a wide range of political movements, including liberalism and social democracy, or even some conservative thinkers who appreciate his emphasis on stability and the orders. Impact on law and constitutional theory. Rawls emphasized on equal basics of liberty and his idea of public regions have influenced discussions of constitutional law, human rights, and the role of the judiciary in democratic society. In particular, his work has been used to justify legal frameworks that protects civil liberty, promotes fair equality of opportunity, and establish welfare systems designed to help the least advantaged. Now, call the ongoing debates, Rawls' idea continued to be called to shape contemporary debates about the economic inequality, social justice, and the role of the state in redistribution of wealth and opportunity. His work is frequently invoked in the discussion of healthcare, education, and global poverty, where issues of fairness and distributions of resources are central. Here is I am going to concluding of this individual's things that is talking about the John Rawls political thoughts, particularly his theory of justice as fairness and talking about the represents a monument's effort to develop a just fair society based on principles that respects individual liberty while addressing economic and social inequality. His work remains foundational in the modern political philosophy, offering a vision of how to reconcile personal freedoms with social justice in a democratic society. Through his concept of the original positions, the veil of ignorance, and the two principles of justice, Rawls provided a framework that continue to inspire and challenge thinkers to in both theoretical and practical domains of justice. Now come to the here talking about the original positions. That means the original positions is one of the most important and distinctive concept introduced by the John Rawls in his theory of justice as fairness. He talked about it is a hypothetical scenario used as a thorough experiment to help determine what principles of justice rational individuals would choose to govern a fair society. The idea is central to his work, specifically a theory of justice, and serve as the foundations for deciding how the basic structures of the society should be organized to ensure justice. Purpose of the original positions. The original positions is united to models a fair and impartial decision-making process. Rawls uses it to justify his two principles of justice, which he believed would be chosen by the rational individuals under fair conditions. The key features of the original position is that it abstracts away the biasness or personal interest that could influence the decision making process and ensure fairness and equality. And in this way, the original positions replace the orders, social contracts theory by thinkers like the Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. But what with a modern twist, instead of imaginations, individuals agreeing to a social contract in real historical conditions, Rawls' original positions is purely hypothetical situations that guarantee impartials through the concept of the veil of ignorance. Now come to the next thing, that is veil of ignorance. The at the heart of the original position is the veil of ignorance, is a device that removes all knowledge of one's personal characteristics and social positions. Individuals in the original position do not know their race, ethnicity, or gender, their social class, wealth or income, their talents, ability, and disability, their religious or moral beliefs, their personal preference or life goals, the generations and time period they will live in. This ignorance ensures that individuals are not just wise by their own particular circumstances when they choosing the principles of justice. They must choose principles that they are to everyone, since they could end up being anyone once the veil is limited. The veil of ignorance forces individuals to adopt an impartial point of view, which leads to them to the select rules and principles that would be fair and just to all members of society, especially those who might be disadvantaged. Now come to the original positions, that is the decisions in the original positions, that behind the veil of ignorance individuals are tasked with selecting the principles that will govern the basic structures of the society, including its political, legal, and economic institutions. Rawls agree that rational agents would agree on the two key principles of justice, that is, the equals liberty principles. Each person has an equal right to the most extensive basic liberty compatible with similar liberty for others. This ensures equal political and civil rights such as freedoms of speech, freedoms of consciousness, and the right to vote. The difference principles and fair equality of opportunity. Fair equality of opportunity, that is, social and economic inequality, should be arranged so that office and positions are open to all under conditions of fair equality and opportunity. This means that people with similar ability and ambitions should have equal chances to succeed regardless of their social background. The difference principles, social and economic inequality are permissible only if they benefited the least advantaged members of the society. These principles ensure that any inequality work to the advantage of the worst of and rather than simply increasing the wealth of the privileged. The decision making process in the original positions is based on the idea that without knowing one's own circumstances, people would want to secure certain protections in case they ended up within a disadvantaged positions. This lead to them to choose principles that protect the least well off and ensure fair opportunity for all. Next is that is rationality in the original positions. The individuals in the original positions are assumed to be rational and mutually disintegrated. This means they are focused on maximizing their own well-being and are not concerned with the welfares of the others, except as it might affect their own situations once the veil is lifted. However, since they do not know their own positions in the society, rational self-interest lead to them to choose principles and just and there for everyone's ensuring that they are protected regardless of whether they are end up. The concept of rationality in Rawls' framework is not purely self-interest in the sense of maximizing personal wealth or powers. Rather, it involves choosing principles that promote long-term security, fairness, and stability. Behind the veil of ignorance, individuals are incentivized to choose principles that ensure a just society for all, knowing that they could end up being in disadvantaged groups once the bill is lifted. Now come to the motivations and the outcomes. That is, the original positions provide a way to justify roles to principles of justice by showing that they would be chosen by rational, impartial individuals under fair conditions. The goal is to arrive at principles that can form the basis of bail order society, one in which citizens are free and equals and social institutions are structured in a way that respects these values. In this scenario, individuals are motivated by a desire to protect their basic liberty and ensure fair opportunity regardless of their positions in the society. The outcome is that the principles chosen in the original positions will be fair to all members of society, including the least advantage because the decision maker have no knowledge of their own future's position. Now come to the criticisms of the original positions. Here I am talking about despite its elegance and influence, the original position has faced several critics. Unrealistic assumptions. Critics argue that the original positions and veil of ignorance are too abstract and idealized real human beings with their complex social and emotional attachments may not think in such a disparate way about the justice. Utilitarians critics. Some utilitarians argue that the original positions ignorance the possibility that individuals might be willing to accept some sacrifice in individuals' liberty or inequality if they lead to the greater overall goods rather than adherence strict to Rawls' two principles. Communitarian critics like the Michael Sanders argue that the original positions assumptions A detach and abstract conceptions of the self which neglect the importance of social relations, community, value, and particular identity in shaping our understandings of the justice. Now the seventh important significance of the original positions that is, despite these critics talking about the original positions remains a powerful and influential concept in political philosophy. It provides a models for thinking about justice in a way that abstracts from the personal basis and focus on the fairness for all. Raw use of original positions and veil of ignorance has had a profound impact on discussions about justice, fairness, and the role of political institutions in promoting equality and protecting individuals' rights. The original positions offers a compelling method for justifying principles of justice that are impartial and fair. It has inspired a wide range of debates about the nature of justice, equality, and the role of governments in addressing social and economic inequality. Now come to the conclusion parts of the original positions. Concluding remarks is that the original positions of John Rawls' thoughts experiments designated to the generated impartial principle of justice by imagining individuals making decisions behind a veil of ignorance. Rawls argued that it would choose principles that ensure equal basic liberty, fair equality of opportunity, and the difference principles, which ensure that inequality benefits the less advantaged. The original positions offer a compelling frameworks for the thinking about justice in a way that transcends personal biasness, and it remains one of the most influential concepts in contemporary political philosophy. Thank you. Thank you for hearing the lectures. Okay, thank you once again.